Hi, I'm Dustin, and I'm the creator of RapidRig and all the different RapidRig products. And in this first tutorial for RapidRig Modular 3, I'm going to briefly go through the UI and just explain maybe some things are different or just what to expect if you've never used RapidRig before. So this is our main UI. It's usually launched from the RapidRig Modular button. And before I get too far into this, I'll just mention that it's still in beta, so things may look a little bit different by the time you get to using it. All right, so I'm going to just go through some of these tabs. So across the very top, we have our setup proxies, our generate rig, our control settings, and our joint settings. And in each of these, we have like some sub tabs. So we'll start with the setup proxies tab. And this is where you kind of start before you can do anything else. You need to create your initial proxy rig. So up here, we have this create new proxy rig. And from here, you can click it to create, whatever you want to create, whether it's a biped, quadruped. You can create your own custom templates. You can add and remove. All that stuff is in here. Or you could just choose to not create with a template, and then you'll just create just from scratch with a fresh one. So I'll just do that just to kind of quickly show how this works. And so once you have your proxy rig created, you'll have your root, you'll have your main, and everything's prefixed with RRM. So it shouldn't be confusing as to what's part of this proxy. And from here, you can go through and start creating your different modules. So you can create a leg. Everything needs a name, so you can type them in. You can choose from the default names, and you can also edit your defaults here by adding new and removing. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm just going to create my leg. You can change the size of your UI. I can change the various settings, but I'll just create my legs there, and now I have legs. And I'll just create a spine. So I just use the spline module to create a spline. There we go, and I could create some arms, arm, mirrored, there we go, and so on and so forth. So all your different modules that you can create are here. So one of the new ones is the bridge. This is basically the only one you can use where you can connect at two different points. Everything else kind of locks in on one. So you choose like what you want to attach it to. So for example, I want to make a hand, I would do that by selecting here, and I could create like an FK chain and call this like finger. And I'll create that, and it'll create on both sides. There we go. But again, I could choose to not mirror. Anyway, I'll go into all these details more in upcoming videos. And so once we have these here, and we're happy with that, or we want to make changes, this is where you have your edit modules. So in here, you can choose your drop down. I'll just refresh it. So now I should have all the different ones. And I could choose them from here, or I can select one of the ones I want to edit and just say load selected. And now I get very similar settings to what I had before, and I can go ahead and make changes. So for example, we'll just go to the spine here, and I'll load that selected one, and I'll just say I want it to have 3 joints instead. And I'll just say apply edits, and now there's 1, 2, 3 instead. So that's the create and edit, and then we have these fit proxies to character. Now in the old version of the UI for RapidRig Modular 2 and 1, everything was this was stacked next to the build and edit. So if you'd like that the way it was before, you can click this button here to expand or collapse it. Or you can just work with it in the second tab. And here you can go in and change the colors of your modules. You can clone modules, you can reattach, all that sort of stuff. Again, other videos will go through this in more depth. And then the next thing we have is our save and load proxies. So once you have a setup done, you can save either the transform, so it saves the positional, like translate, rotate scales of those. And then you can also save an entire setup. So that way you can save a setup for a character that you may want to reuse for a different character and make slight modifications, save that one out too. And then this is a new feature, you can load proxies from an existing rig. So if you have a rig built but you don't have a proxy rig, you can load it from there. Okay, so that's the proxies, and then we'll go to the generate rig tab. So here, once you're happy with your rig, you can go in and generate your rig. So there's a few settings. By default, it just names everything without any prefixes for the name, but if you want to add a custom prefix for your rig, you can. I generally don't recommend this because usually you use file referencing for animation, but if you find that you want to have a custom name for your rig, yeah, go for it. And if you're wanting to push this to a game engine, you want to enable the create single hierarchy joint chain. So what this does is it creates one hierarchy of joints where it's all connected to each other. And so if you're bringing this into Unreal or Unity or any other engine, you're going to want to enable this option. And with that, there are some extra settings. I'm going to just, yeah, I'll turn it on for now, and then I'll just generate this rig that I've quickly created. And there we go. So now I have my rig. And when you generate your rig, the proxy rig gets hidden. But you can turn it on, there's the layer there. And then we have our single hierarchy joints, we have our regular joints, and then we have our controls. So you can turn all these on and off as you need. So that's the generate rig and then rebuild. So let's say you decide that you need to make a change to your rig. You can go back to the proxy rig, modify it, update the positions of things, and then come back here and select the control, and then you can rebuild. And there's some settings here for if you have it skinned, if you want to preserve any animation, if you've created custom layers, stuff like that. And then when you rebuild, it'll generate a new rig. Well, actually, not a new rig. It'll rebuild the existing rig and reattach any mesh that was there, reload your animation. So it's a way to like make changes to an existing rig. That way it's a bit more nonlinear development. Okay, so control settings here. We have a few different tabs here. We have the rig rest pose. What this basically means is you may want to rig the character in a traditional A pose, but for animators, they may want to work with it in a T pose. So this is a way of changing and being able to switch between your bind pose and like your natural resting pose, which should be used by animators. And you could save that information as well. So you can save the file, and then you can swap the rig between the two modes. Again, other videos will go through this in more detail. And then we have face settings. So another thing that's new to Rapid Rig Modular 3 is there is a new face rig. And one of the things that comes with it is eyelids. So what you can do is pose your controls for your eyelids in a closed state and then re-record it, because obviously eyes are different shapes and different settings, different looks that you may want to try to achieve. So you can update, from the default to a clean, natural looking eyelid closed pose for both the top and bottom. Okay, and then in control appearance, there's a few new things here too. So before there was just scale and recoloring, and so now you can, in addition to scale, you can rotate. So for example, I could take this, I could say rotate 90 degrees on the x-axis, and that will just keep spinning it around. And you can see when I'm doing that, it's doing it to the other side, so you can have that work based on if this mirror is on or off. Now it just does the one. And then this is the other thing that's new. So you can go in and swap. Let's say I want a box for, let's say this control here. So I can just switch this to a box up, and then that'll do that for both. And then it selects the points for me, so I can go in and move those around as I need to kind of fit our character. And then, yeah, we have the recolor. And so if I want to change this to a new color, I could just go there and click that, and now you get the new color. So it might make it easier to distinguish, especially if you have lots of like, if you're doing like a spider or something, you may want to have multiple legs or tentacles or whatever. You can more break up the colors to make it easier for animators. And then the next thing we have is external attachments, which again, I'll cover this in another video, but you can go in and let's say you have your own object, you can attach your object to the rig, and you can choose whether it does it through parenting or constraining. Constraining is the default, but you can choose parent. And if you're doing constraints, if you don't want to parent constraint, you have to do a point and or an orient. So you have to have at least one of these. So it'll force you to do that. And then scale is optional. And then the nice thing with this is, you load in your control, and then when you want to rebuild your rig, it will remember these hookups and it will naturally rehook things up. So if you want to attach a backpack or some other object to the rig manually that's not part of the rig build, it's a way of having that be preserved even on a rebuild. And then the last tab we have is the joint settings. So in here, this is basically the same as it was before. This is for renaming to motion builder naming conventions. So if you select your joints in your single hierarchy, you can go through and I can select say here for the arm, and I can say this is a left arm, and what it will do is rename, and by default auto mirror is on, so that'll rename the other side. And you could reset the names, and yeah, that way if you make a mistake, you can just go in and reset it. So that's pretty much everything for the UI. The last thing I'll mention is there are the edit menus. So some of these things that you may have seen me clicking through are not the defaults, and that's because I've saved my settings. So if you save as, you can save a custom file for your settings, and that way when you close the UI and open it back up, it'll remember that, which is useful if you're creating your own custom default names for things, or if you're creating a new proxy rig and you want to add your own templates. This way that will all get remembered, and it will remember all your settings too. So like say for example, when you're creating arms, you always want it to have two twist joints in the upper and lower. It will remember all those settings if you choose to save your settings. And then the support so far just has get online support, which will take you to the web page where you can either peruse some of the documentation or fill out a document or like an email to get in touch with me that way too. All right, so that's everything for this initial video of taking you through the new RapidRig Modular 3 UI. Thanks for watching.